everybody. Thanks for coming. I had a feeling that the password management talk would be well attended, so we have a guest, Dewey, in the back too, in the corner. That is our 2-year-old Aussie Doodle. So yeah, today we're gonna break down. We'll just get started. There's a lot of different ways that you can store your passwords. As we're probably aware of some of them, and maybe not as aware of some other ones. But we're going to break down 7 methods for password storage. First one that we're going to cover is password manager software. The specific one that we're going to talk about that you might have heard before is LastPass. After that, we're going to talk about phone-based password storage, just basic saving on your Samsung or Apple iPhone. After that, browser-based password storage, which would be things like Chrome or Brave browser or Safari or different password or browsers. After that will be USB or external storage, so storing it on a physical device that's separate from your iPhone or iPad or laptop. Fifth one will be what a lot of people here use, I think, written in a physical notebook, which has its advantages and disadvantages, which we'll see for all of them. The next one, document on a computer or a phone, and then the last one is just strict memorization.
That's
I think it used to work 15 years ago when you only needed 2 or 3 account logins, but the average person these days has 27 account logins. So, and the trick is that there's different password requirements for all of those logins. So you might need a capital letter here, you might need a symbol there, you might need a number there, and so on. Before I get started, all of these things, kind of the underlying thing I want to get across is that you're balancing whether you want to be more secure or more convenient, right? So they all have their pros and cons in terms of being more usually if it's more secure, then it's less convenient. Usually if it's more convenient, then it's less secure. So that'll be a recurring theme as we go through here. Okay? So the first one is password management software. Has anybody heard of LastPass before by chance? Yeah. Yes? Okay, cool. So password management software is the most secure out of anything that we'll talk about today. Part of the nice thing about password management software is that it recommends passwords for you and then automatically saves them. So rather than you having to come up with a unique password for each of your websites, if you have something like LastPass on your browser or your phone, it will just automatically create a password for you when you have a new login that you're doing, and then it will save that, and each time you go back, then it'll use that again. The thing with trying to either memorize your passwords or write them in a book, lots of times what we end up doing is we go back to the same passwords that we've used before. The nice thing about password management software like LastPass is that it's creating new passwords for you all the time. Later on, we'll get into why reusing passwords is kind of a problem. But for now, we'll leave it at that. Some other advantages: use a strong encryption to protect your passwords, and autofills passwords across your devices. So basically, how LastPass works is you have your login for your account, or your vault, I guess you could call it, and you have a master password that you need to know for that. Once you log in with that master password, then you can see all of your other passwords within your account. To kind of better explain this, we have a video.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a 3.6 GPA.
90% of students, the average person has 27 unique web logins. To create an account on a site, you have to register with a username and password. And most people pick passwords that are easy to remember. Actually, a lot of us end up using the same password for all of our websites, which is understandable, but risky. There are many different ways that hackers can get your password. They can use programs that try to guess it by randomly cycling through different combinations, hacking the website itself, or phishing by sending fake emails that look like they're from a website or company, but actually aren't. All of this spells bad news for people that reuse the same password, because you're putting yourself at much higher risk for hackers being able to get into your emails, your photos, and even your bank account. Last year, Yahoo made headlines when it was the victim of a massive cyber attack, with sensitive information being stolen from 1 billion accounts. So if you had a Yahoo account and you used that same password for other sites, you are now vulnerable to all those other accounts being hacked too. Every time there's a big hack like this, experts tell us to stop using the same password for every website. In fact, they say we should stop memorizing our passwords altogether, recommending that we use something called the password manager instead. I know, it already sounds complicated, but trust me, it's really not, and it'll help make all of your accounts much more secure. We currently think of passwords as things that we memorize and store inside our to register with the
Turn it up a little bit, probably.
And
Yeah.
most people pick passwords that
1 second.
You could just go all the way, thank you.
that are easy to remember. Actually, a lot of us end up using the same password. We make them really more secure. We currently think of passwords as things that we memorize and store inside our heads. But since we're really bad at remembering random things, there's a limit to how complex your password can be and how many different ones you'll be able to remember. As a result, most people have really simple passwords, and many use the same one across all their logins. This sucks because if a hacker gets access to your one password, they then have access to all of your different accounts. And if your password is uncomplicated, it's astonishingly easy for hackers to guess it. For instance, if you use a password like, well, password, which is actually the 8th most commonly used one, it would take a hacker mere milliseconds to guess it. But if you use a password manager to generate a 15-digit series of random upper and lowercase letters and numbers, that time jumps up to 609 million years. The biggest thing we need to do is stop keeping our passwords in our heads. Instead, we need to put them somewhere else and lock them up, like a virtual safe. This is what the password manager does. It's basically an app that keeps all of your passwords secure inside of a safe that only you can unlock. This way you only need to remember one password. And once you unlock the safe, you can see all of your many different passwords in one place. Since it's an app, you can access your passwords from any device you've installed them. And since you don't need to remember all your passwords anymore, you can make them really long and complicated. So what happens if your password manager gets hacked? They would have access to all of your individual passwords then, right? Not necessarily. The password manager encrypts your data, so if a hacker looks inside your safe, all they'll see is scrambled passwords. LastPass was hacked in 2015, and users had to change their master passwords, but the individual passwords inside were safe because of this encryption. It may seem like it would be annoying to have to retrieve your password for every single website, but actually, most password managers have browser plugins that automatically fill your info in for you. So in many cases, it's actually easier. And besides, it's better than the alternative, becoming one of the millions of Americans that get hacked every year.
Okay, so big takeaway there, I think, is that when you just memorize your passwords, you tend to make your passwords very simple. When you make your passwords very simple, then they're one, more easily repeatable across multiple websites, and more easy for hackers to figure out potentially. So that's why something like a password management software is advantageous. Now going to the cons.
Can I have a question? Can
Yep.
we ask questions?
Yeah,
Stephen?
for sure.
So, like LastPass, I have it on my phone, I've not used it, I wasn't sure, but anyway, can you store your actual passwords in there too, or is this just gonna generate random ones for every?
Yep, you can do it either way. You could generate a password when you try to make a new login for a website, or you could just, an existing login that you have for a website, you could store it in there. So you could do it either way, however you want to customize it. And then the other thing that's a con for this is, in case you forget that master password that kind of logs you into your account, then you won't be able to access anything. Going back to, they mentioned that in 2015 LastPass was hacked. LastPass also actually had a breach in 2022, but all that the people got, because these master passwords are encrypted and everything in there, is the email for the people. So basically think of that like somebody was able to steal a bank vault, but what good is being able to see the bank vault if you don't have the password to get into it? So what they ended up doing, the people that hacked LastPass and got all the emails, they took the emails and they sent phishing or spam emails to those people for them to try to create logins on other websites. Because oftentimes, like I've mentioned before, people reuse the same password. So then they would take that information of them putting in a new login on a new website, in all likelihood, it would be the same password that they would have used for LastPass, and they would apply it to LastPass. So that's why you need to be very careful when making new accounts on different websites, because sometimes they can be phishing or spam. Okay. Any questions related to that at all?
Is this a subscription service?
They have, it's a freemium model, so I use LastPass and it's free, but they have more premium services, mostly for like big businesses and corporations that have a lot of data that they need to store passwords for. But no, the free version is completely fine to use for this. It can get you everything you need.
So you would download that app, you get that app on your phone, and then how do you start going to all your different sites and then get those, how
Sure.
do those get generated?
Sure. So after you downloaded the app on your phone, then you give it some permissions to be able to edit logins when it goes into different apps. Like say for example, you have like your Fidelity app or your Chase app for your financials. The stored information that it would have in there, either that you've put in there yourself or that it's acquired through the making of accounts, would then automatically just do an autofill into those websites. And then the nice thing about that is to say you use that on your phone or you set up everything on your phone, then that can transfer to your browser. If you, say for example, use Google Chrome, there's a browser extension that you can use for LastPass, and then it'll do autofill. It'll recognize when you're going into Fidelity or Chase or anything that you have a stored password with, and it'll just automatically put in the password for it.
And what about like iPad and all that?
Yep. So same thing. It would be an app that you would download on LastPass app on your iPad, and then it would autofill passwords based on that. Again, this is like we talked about before. It's the trade-off between security and ease of use or convenience. So setting up is kind of the pain part, right, and getting used to it. But it is the most secure way if you're looking to secure all of your different accounts. Yep.
Okay, you mentioned Google Chrome here. I use Microsoft Edge.
Okay.
Is that?
Yep, it's compatible to all different browsers. So whether you're using Edge or Chrome or Safari or any of the other ones, LastPass has a extension that they use that it will be able to import your passwords into it.
So if you have different devices, does it connect
Talk
to
to
all?
each other?
As long as you have LastPass downloaded on all the devices.
Then
So-
they talk to each other, it's not like you have a separate one for your
Yeah,
iPad.
so
versus
your
phone.
main account when you log in is your email and your master password, and then you use that login for all of your different devices, and it saves across devices. Yep.
I wanted to ask about passkey and that. Is it safe to keep your password in there?
Passkey, are you referencing your iPad?
No, I did it on my computer, actually on my Mac computer.
Okay. Yeah, so passkey or I can't remember. There's another name for it that Apple uses. That's one of them that we'll talk about here in a second.
Okay.
Actually.
Okay.
Any more questions about password management software? No? LastPass is one example. It's the I used it because I've used it for 4 or 5 years now, and it's one of the most reputable out there. Okay. So.
Just one more thing.
Yep.
So let's say, okay, you just set up a new account, and it says set up a password, so then you just click on the last.
Sure.
Yeah.
So there's 2 ways you could go about it. You could either create your own password when it pops up, and then LastPass will save that information, or there's an option where it will create you a unique password for that website,
Oh,
which again goes back to not reusing the same passwords
Right.
over and over again. Because if you have, let's say, 5 different websites that you use the same password for, if a hacker gets one, then they can potentially log into the other websites. So the big advantage is creating passwords for unique logins, accounts, websites. Yep. Okay, cool. I forgot to mention this on the last slide, but I have a security score and an ease of use score on the bottom. That's probably subject for debate. I kind of grappled with where I would rank some of those. But anyways, that's what you can reference on the bottom.
what was the other, the first one,
9 out of 10 for security and 6 out of 10 for ease of use.
the LastPass was?
For LastPass, yep.
And what was it again?
The last one was 9 out of 10 for security and 6 out of 10 for ease of use.
Okay.
So again, the LastPass is the most technical out of any of these, and your password managers are going to be the most technical, so they're the most difficult to use.
What does security score mean?
How secure using that particular password storage method is in comparison to the rest. So for example, and we'll get to it in later slides, like having the security risks of writing your passwords down in a notebook is 1, somebody could see it, 2, you could easily lose the notebook, 3, it could say there's a house fire and you could burn it, 4, you could lose it. There's a lot of different security risks that come up.
Okay, so it's basically a checklist, and how many on that checklist are checked off for each of these options?
Yeah, it's just a flat score out of 10. So I don't have like certain criteria that it met for those 10 points.
Yeah.
It was just.
Well, my
an estimate.
confusion was that, you said if you do, let's say 15 random characters, it's, like a umpteen billion to 1 to be able to.
Chance to guess it.
So, that's one thing about protecting your passwords. This is a different.
Yeah, these are all the 7 things we're talking about here are ways to store your passwords. Not specifically what your passwords are, but ways to store them. The advantage of the password management LastPass that we just talked about is that it can create unique passwords for you. Okay. Okay, so this next one kind of goes on what you were talking about, phone-based password storage. So Apple Keychain, and I think there's some other names for it too, is what's used on Apple devices like your iPad, MacBook, or iPhone. For Samsung, I can't remember what the name of it is, but they have unique ways to store your passwords in that device. So that is nice if you're on your phone a lot and you're logging into different apps. It's a pretty seamless way to store the passwords on your phone and then put them into your apps. The other nice thing about that too is that have we heard of 2-factor authorization before? So there's kind of a built-in 2-factor authorization for it because in order to get into your phone, most of us either have some sort of passcode or have Face ID or put our thumbprint on or something like that. So it's kind of a built-in additional 2-factor authorization where you need to be the person in order to get into the device, and then once you're in the device, then use the password. And then the other advantage is that it syncs across your devices in the ecosystem. So, for example, when you saved your passwords on your iPad, that would transfer over to your MacBook or to your iPhone. Same thing with Samsung or Google devices, it transfers over. And the cons of that, kind of related the same way. If I save my passwords on my iPhone with the Apple Keychain, I can't directly transfer them over to a Samsung device. Apple stuff, unfortunately and notoriously, kind of just talks to Apple stuff. That's a way for Apple to encourage you to purchase all Apple devices as opposed to mixing and matching. So that's the con of that. Phone-based password storage is something I personally have never used. We will get into specifics about things that I use and what I use them for at the end. But admittedly, this is one that I don't have as much experience with. Does anybody use Apple password management like what we're talking about here, or Samsung? Yeah? Okay.
I do for one of my apps.
Yeah, and part of the reason that I don't use it is I spend a lot more of my time on my laptop than on my phone. So pretty much everything that I interact with for accounts is on my computer. So while I could store passwords on my phone and transfer them to my computer, it's just not quite as convenient as doing what our next one will be, which is, and lastly, I'll just mention this first. Security score 8 out of 10 and ease of use score 8 out of 10 for phone-based password.
Quick question is, so if you were to have, you had the computer and you had the phone, with Apple phone, you would have to then do a separate storage for your computer, is that what you're saying?
If you have a different, So it depends, if your phones and your computer are the same ecosystem, meaning Apple to Apple or Samsung to Samsung. If you have like an Apple iPhone and an HP computer, you will need to set up passwords for both of those. Those won't talk to each other at all.
But LastKey you can download on any device and it will. So
For-
if you have a Google phone and an Apple computer and you download LastPass on both of them, because it's an app that's not associated with the ecosystem, it will go
Mhm.
from device to device, even if your devices are different and not Apple to Apple or Google to Google.
Yep, so that would have been an advantage of the first one we talked about, the password management software, is that it's downloadable on all devices, right? The phone-based one, the number 2 that we just talked about, that one is not transferable from device to device. Another one that is transferable from device to device, and this is the one that I use for most of my password management, is your browser-based password storage. So when we talked about Chrome earlier, or Safari, or Brave browser, which I use, or any of your other browsers, all of them have built-in ways to save account logins when you input them for the first
So
time.
is that the same thing as what I was talking about? with
I
the
think what you
passkey?
were talking about was number 2, the one that we just talked about before. The browser-based one would be specifically within Chrome or
Oh,
Safari or one of your browser apps.
With the other one though, if you've saved your own password that you've made in there, is there a way to get in there if you wanna change it?
Yep. It's it's not the easiest to get to on your device. You kind of have to dig into your settings a little bit in order to get there. But yeah, you can go into it, edit it, and view it and change it if you would like.
So if you're gonna do that one, you're better to use the suggestion they give versus using your own, which was a mistake I made. I saved my own
I'm
versus
not
using the
positive
suggestion.
if
Yeah.
Joa, do they give you suggestions for
They did for me before I saved this.
I believe they do. I typically use all of my own, so I believe that they do.
Okay.
I was actually just going into my phone to kind of look at it on the back end, because I rarely do as well.
But yes, going back to your question, you can edit that within there. And all of these that we're talking about here are editable. So the first one that we talked about, LastPass, you can edit your username and passwords. The second one we talked about, and then this one here too, browser-based password storage. So this one for me is the most convenient. 1, because I use my laptop the most, and 2, because it doesn't really require any setup or getting used to. Passwords can be saved automatically. For example, if you log into your Chase account for the first time and you type in your email and your password, and then all of a sudden after you log in, a little drop down will come down, say save password for chase.com, which I think some of us have seen before. So it's pretty seamless saving passwords in your browser.
So you use that one, Spencer? You're comfortable using that? Cause I've always said no.
No, I wouldn't say that it's to the security level that LastPass is. LastPass is a bit more secure, but your browser-based ones like Safari or Chrome or Brave or any of those are still very safe to save your passwords within.
No, these are all user-created passwords, are they?
Correct, so anything, you cannot have your web browser or your browser-based password storage, that will not create a password for you, not like LastPass will. LastPass will create a password for you. The browser-based storage and the phone-based storage that we just talked about, those are just ways to save your existing passwords, not to create new ones. Another advantage of this, which was a disadvantage of the previous one, you can sync across multiple devices. You can download Google Chrome on your Apple iPhone, and you can download it on your HP laptop or Dell laptop or whatever laptop. So it's compatible with all devices, is the advantage. The disadvantage is that passwords don't sync across browsers. So say for example, if I like using Safari on my iPhone, but I use Google Chrome on my laptop, I can't have my saved Safari passwords go to my Google Chrome on my laptop. That's a minor disadvantage. I wouldn't really say that's a major one. But anyways, security score a little bit lower than LastPass, at a 6 out of 10. Ease of use score though is the highest that we've had so far at 9 out of 10. Okay, number 4, USB or external storage. This one is, I'd say, it's not widely used. Probably the least widely used out of any of the ones that we've listed here. So think of your old, they're still sometimes used today, but a USB drive that you plug into your computer. If you would prefer your passwords and all of that to be offline. So number 1, 2, and 3 that we talked about were all cloud or online storage, right? You could access them via internet. This one, the USB or external storage, is offline, right? It's on a physical device that's not connected to the network. So because of that, it's safe from online hacks while it's disconnected. And I guess you could look at inexpensive as the price as a Pro or a Con. All the other ones that we've mentioned have been free so far. This one is $10, so I guess take that how you will. But the cons, USB drives can be easily lost, stolen, or damaged. And we're not always carrying our drives on us, or USB drives on us like we are phones or laptops or tablets. No autofill, so you have to copy and paste from your storage drive or file on your device to wherever it needs to go. And finally, you need a device with a USB port to access. So, for example, my phone does not have a USB port to plug in, so I would need to have a laptop or some device that has a USB port in order to view it. So security score for that, 5 out of 10. Ease of use score, 4 out of 10. Again, these numbers are, it was hard to decide how to judge those numbers. So. Okay, number 5, written in a physical notebook. How many people here use a physical notebook? I know a lot of us do. Okay. So the pros of a physical notebook, it's like the USB drive that we just talked about before. It's immune to digital hacking or cyber attacks. No technical knowledge required at all, so you don't have to go through all the hoops of learning how to use LastPass and things like that. And there's no software or hardware risk, so you don't have to worry about any of the software or hardware getting hacked at all. However, the cons is that a notebook can be lost, stolen, or damaged. There's no autofill. And less accessibility. I think another one that I could put on there is sometimes we forget to update our notebooks, so then we have outdated passwords that aren't correct, and then you're trying to scramble to figure out what it is. So I think part of the reason that a lot of us in this room use physical notebooks is probably because it doesn't take a lot of technical skill, and I think there's probably more concern in this room than maybe with your millennial or Gen Z population of software and hardware risk or digital hacks or cyber attacks. So we'll go into that at the end, because I kind of have an overarching suggestion or solution at the end for that. But anyway, security score 3 out of 10, ease of use score 7 out of 10. Next up, and I'll kind of cycle through this pretty quick because we're gonna be repeating some things that we already said. Document on your computer or phone, so that could be like a Microsoft Word document on your laptop, or I know Donna uses her notes on her phone. Never mind, anyways, the nice thing about that is it's available without the internet, and you can customize it and format it how you would like. The cons for that, risk of data loss if the device is lost or fails, unless you're saving it to the cloud. So certain things, like if you were saving your you had to save as a Microsoft Word document. Microsoft Word documents don't always save automatically to the cloud, so they can be accessed in the future. However, if you had a Google Docs you access online, and they're automatically saved to the cloud. So because of that, you can access them if your device or laptop or computer is ever lost. Then the other con requires manual copying and pasting, no autofill. So security score 2 out of 10, ease of use score 5 out of 10. And finally, memorization. In the video that we watched earlier, it referenced a lot about memorization and the risks associated with memorization. The nice things, or the pros, no physical or digital record to steal, and no dependency on devices, internet, or software, so you just have it in your brain. But the problem with having it just in your brain is you can forget it, it's difficult to manage the changes. Did I add a question mark to the end of this password, or did I add a capital letter at the beginning? It's hard to, if you have 27 different accounts, it's hard to remember all those changes. And then lastly, often resort to simpler passwords because you're just memorizing. Okay? So security score 1 out of 10, ease of use score 7 out of 10, or 3 out of 10. So this is just a table of everything that we talked about, the 7 different options for password storage, the level of security of those, and then the ease of use of those. Again, most times more security means less easy to use, and easier to use means less security. I would not say that there's a one-size-fits-all for everyone in this room for what works for you. Some of us might be more technically advanced than others. Some of us might have more sensitive information that they have out there that they don't want accessed by people than others. So it kind of depends on your situation what you want to do. I'm not trying to tell you after this talk to do for sure password management software or for sure do browser-based password storage. Just kind of wanted to present you with options and you decide with it what you will for what makes sense for you. Now, I mentioned before that I use password management software and the browser-based password storage for storing my passwords. What I recommend for people to do in the room is sensitive accounts and sensitive information, for example, financials or your email or things like that. Maybe having more secure passwords and having them stored in a more secure manner is a good idea. However, if it's something like your login to Pinterest or a login to your fantasy football team on yahoo.com, you don't necessarily have to jump through all the hoops in order to make sure that password is secure. So because we have so many different logins, we don't need to really be careful about all of them. Just be careful about the stuff that's most important. Okay, make sure those are unique passwords and those are stored in a good way. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. 3 best practices. If you do these 3 things, so what we talked about before was all specific ways to store your passwords. These are things to do for preventing hackers or spam or any phishing scams from happening. So activate 2-factor authorization. So 2-factor authorization means when you log into your account. So you put in your email and you put in your password. If you have 2-factor authorization, then there will need to be a second way that you verify you are who you are. That could be something like a Google Authenticator, which gives you like a 6-digit code to input. That could be an email address that sends you a 6-digit code to input, or that could be an SMS message, a text message that you put in to verify you are who you are. I listed these in order of most secure to least secure. So if you have an option to do 2-factor authorization, Authenticator is your best bet. Then after that, email is the second most secure. And then after that, a text message is the least secure of the 3.
What does Authenticator mean again?
So authenticators came out probably, I don't know, in the last 5-ish years. But it's an app that you download on your phone, and then you have a rotating 6-digit code that pops up for all of your accounts that you have 2-factor authorization for it, or authorization for. So, for example, if I went on my phone, I'll just show you guys. I know it will be small, but so I have about 20 different accounts that I have 2-factor authorization set up with Google Authenticator, and I'll just kind of walk around so you can see. It has all of the accounts with 6-digit codes that expire after about 10 seconds. So that the rotating codes ensure that it can't be hacked easily because they're always changing.
And it's through Google.
Authenticator. Yep, there's a few different apps that you can get Authenticator through. Google Authenticator is the most popular one of the bunch. But again, that is the most secure way to do a two-factor authorization, is to have a Google Authenticator. Or I think LastPass has one. Microsoft might have one as well, but I've always used Google.
So Spencer, you said those expire after 10 seconds?
Yep.
So when you were, so how does that work when you're going to a site? How do you get that code to get to that?
Sure.
authenticator?
So it will, after you put in your email and your password, then you're transferred to a page that said, we just sent, or check your Google Authenticator for a 6-digit code. If you don't get it in on time, like within those next 10 seconds, that's okay. It will look at it from the moment that you hit enter with the next
So
6
how does,
digit.
like, the Aurora site know that you have authenticated? How does that?
It's something that you would set up in your settings. So within your settings, you would enable two-factor authorization, and then you would have options underneath that for how you would want to do it. Whether you would want to do it through a text message like SMS, or email, or through an
So that would be
authenticator.
site specific, that would be on the Aurora site.
Cause Aurora
Yep.
kinda has that defaulted in their stuff already.
Yeah.
That they have to do the two-factor.
I know, but I always do my
Some
phone,
phones,
so
some
I
don't.
also did this.
And then how you connect the two accounts, so how you connect Aurora with your authenticator on your phone. Lots of times they have a QR code. You scan the QR code through your authenticator, and then that tells Aurora that's the medium that you're gonna use two-factor authorization. After you do it once or twice, that's pretty much the process for most of them.
But if the authenticator is too overwhelming for some of the people, doing a text message is still better than doing nothing at all.
Correct, thank you. So yes, these are just listed in order of the most secure.
I never
However,
heard of that.
doing an SMS message or a text message will always be more secure than not having two-factor authorization on at all.
So the authenticator with email and SMS is more secure than the two-factor, or?
These are examples of ways that you can have a two-factor authorization.
So what are the
right?
2 factors then?
So your first factor is your account login, your email and your password, and then your second factor would be one of those 3
okay,
things.
got it, okay.
Yep. Factor, there are 3 things can be a factor. I just heard this I was watching a video earlier. Something you know, something you have, and something you are the 3 different types of factors. So something you know would be a password. Something you have would be an authenticator or an email or a text message. Something you are, which is another factor, would be Face ID or your thumbprint or something like that.
That would be like the 3rd factor.
Yeah, I've never seen Activate 3FA before for 3-factor authorization, but if you were to add a 3rd factor, it would be, the first one would be your email and password. The second one would be something you have, which would be authenticator, email, or SMS. A 3rd option would be something you are, like a thumbprint or Face ID, which is what your phone uses in order to verify that's you. So that's first password best practice, enable 2-factor authorization. Number 2, avoid easily guessable passwords, which I think we've all heard before. And I'll add on to that, on accounts that are important, like financials and things like that, try to make sure that you have unique passwords for those that aren't the same as your other accounts. You don't necessarily have to have unique passwords for all of your accounts, but try to make sure that your important accounts are the ones with unique passwords. And then finally, avoid entering passwords on some suspicious websites or links received via email or messages. Going back to what we mentioned about LastPass getting hacked, them having email addresses of everybody, and then sending out phishing scams to try to get you to tell you their password. or your password. So that's that. A last
Quick question on that one. Why is email more secure than SMS?
SMS, the way that I understood it from, I listened to a video of somebody that's like a professional hacker, and he talked about that mobile carriers involve a lot of middlemen or third parties that you don't necessarily want to trust. That's not to say that like T-Mobile and Verizon and US Cellular are out there giving away your information and your text messages to shady characters, but there's just more potential for people within that ecosystem to see your text messages than there would be through an email. Yep.
I just have one question. Now, I've got some accounts where when I log in, they do the two-factor authentication, you know, and then other ones that don't. Yeah, I'm talking about paying bills on some, you know, with like American Express, Citibank, whatever.
Mhm.
So, if you want, is there a way to have them do that two-factor, or if you have this authenticator thing, would that automatically do it with those accounts?
Yep, most websites these days have the option for two-factor authorization. It's just something that you'd have to go to in your settings, and it would probably be under some heading like security or
Within that account?
Within that account.
Okay.
And then when you get to that page, then it'll give you options for how you want to.
So you're
what
telling
kind
them, hey, I want you to do this.
Yes.
Okay.
You're telling them, don't let me log in
unless you
until I
do
give
this.
you
Okay.
more information to verify that it's me.
Okay.
Mhm.
I got a kind of a general question. Say I'm in my bank account, for example, I'm doing some transactions or trades or transferring funds or something like that. Is it possible for an external operator to come and do a pop-up and jump into that space?
I've never experienced that before. Are you doing a hypothetical, or is this
That's
something?
a hypothetical.
Okay. Yeah, that's not something that I've encountered before, so I can't really comment on it. That sounds insecure though, so I'm not sure.
Well,
if
it sounds extremely risky, and I don't know if there's something that is provided in your secure website, for example, that would prevent a pop-up from jumping in.
Sure.
I know I've had pop-ups come on occasionally from different sources and different activities, but I've never had one occur when I'm in a secured area.
Yeah. In general, pop-ups proceed with caution, I would say. And it's probably better not to engage with them than to engage with them. Yeah.
Especially when you're a secure website.
Yeah. Last thing I'll mention, and then we'll be done. Do we know who these two are? The Winklevoss brothers. So, the initial way that the Winklevoss brothers their claim to initial fame was suing Mark Zuckerberg for stealing their idea for Facebook. If anybody's ever seen the movie The Social Network before, that kind of highlights their initial rise to fame. But since then, in 2012, they invested in Bitcoin. They now have 70,000 Bitcoin. Does anybody know how much 70,000 Bitcoin is worth?
Billions.
$7 billion it's worth. So, how Bitcoin is stored, there's multiple ways you can store your Bitcoin. What's widely regarded as the safest way is cold storage, which would be storing it offline, not having it accessible on the internet, but accessible through like a hardware device like a USB drive. To access Bitcoin, it's hard for you to see down here, but in order to access their Bitcoin, they need a 64-string of characters, a mixture of letters and numbers and capital letters. So how they store their password, or this 64-digit code to get their Bitcoin, they have it split into shards, first of all. So they have a blue shard, a black shard, and a red shard. So when I say shards, I just mean a piece of paper that has a portion of the Bitcoin, right? Or the Bitcoin passcode. Then what they do is they put it into a fire-safe envelope or package, and they put it at a safety deposit box at a random bank somewhere in the United States. Not only do they do that, so they do that for each of those 3 strings of codes. However, they do that 4 different times, so just in case one of those banks is compromised and it's lost, or something happens where it gets stolen, they can still go and find the other string of characters. So I mention this because this is probably the most secure way that you could store a password or something, by putting it in a string of shards at separate banks and doing it multiple times just in case one of the shards is lost. That is the least easy to use of any system. So they need to be very secure with $7 billion, right? I don't think any of us in here has $7 billion, but be secure with the things that are important, and with the stuff, the accounts that aren't as important, you don't need to worry as much. Just make sure that things like your financials or your emails are in order, and don't necessarily have to worry about all 27 of your accounts. Okay? Okay, cool. So that's the end. This is our upcoming calendar for the rest of summer, July, June, July, August, and September. So next month's talk will be on YouTube. That will be on July 29th from 1:30 to 2:30, so the last Tuesday of July. And subsequent Tuesdays, if